to the deep dive. So, you sent us a really interesting stack of sources this week, articles, some internal memos, a few deep dive reports, and they all seem to be pointing toward this pretty dramatic and crucial shift happening in AI right now. For years, the whole story has been about one thing, scale. We've all been focused on those big headline numbers, the trillion parameter models, these massive context windows, just the sheer volume of data, that obsession with scale, just making the engine bigger, smarter. It's dominated everything. But the sources we're looking at today, and these are from teams actually putting AI into real products, real workflows, they suggest that era might be closing. The central idea for this deep dive as well, it's sharp and it's direct. The next big leap in AI isn't coming from bigger models. It's going to come from better interfaces.
That's the critical realization right there.
Yeah.
It's completely reshaping how people think about product. I mean, if you look back, the whole challenge for the last decade was just engineering the intelligence itself. But now pretty much every major company can tap into world-class reasoning through an API. The engine is smart. And when the engine is smart, the bottleneck, it shifts completely. It moves to how the human actually interacts with it. Teams are finding out the hard way that the limit isn't the model's IQ anymore. It's the, frankly, clumsy way we're forced to talk to it. It's the user experience layer.
That reframes the entire conversation, doesn't it? And it explains why so many of these new AI tools feel so frustrating to use. So our mission for you today is really twofold. First, let's unpack exactly why these incredibly capable models can still feel so, I think the word used was fragile, and why they're often so mentally draining to use day in, day out. And second, we really need to define what better interfaces actually means in practice. We have to move beyond just the simple chatbot that started this whole wave. Okay, let's unpack this.
So we have to start by acknowledging just how far we've come. I mean, as the sources point out, the intelligence itself, it's not really the core barrier anymore. Today's models can do some truly profound things. They synthesize incredibly complex information. They can reason across completely different domains. They handle ambiguity better than any software we've ever built. And, when you guide them correctly, the output is consistently high quality.
And yet, and this is the big disconnect, so many people who try to use these things for actual work, not just for fun, report this intensely frustrating experience. Why is that? Why does something that's supposed to make our lives easier end up feeling so, as you said, mentally draining?
That mental drain is a symptom. It's a symptom of massive cognitive load. Think about what we're asking the user to do. With a normal app, you focus on your task, right? Drafting an email, analyzing a spreadsheet. But with a fragile AI interface, you're forced to spend half your brain power just managing the model's internal state.
Right, so you're constantly juggling questions like, okay, did I set the right persona for this? Or is the temperature parameter correct? Exactly. Is the format absolutely perfect? Have I given it enough context so it doesn't just make something up?
That's it. You are performing continuous prompt engineering. That's the job. You're basically translating your human intent into a language the algorithm can, hopefully, maybe process reliably. And that makes the whole system feel incredibly fragile. It's completely dependent on that one perfect prompt.
And if you miss one little constraint or your phrasing is just slightly off, the output is useless.
Completely useless, which means you're constantly babysitting it.
And that fragility leads straight to the biggest problem for any real business: a lack of trust at scale. I mean, if I can't be sure the AI will stick to our operating procedure 99% of the time without a human checking every single word.
You can't integrate it. You just can't put it into a critical workflow. And that huge gap, that chasm between the model's raw power and the unstable, frustrating user experience, that is purely an interface problem. The way we talk to the machine hasn't caught up to how smart the machine has become.
Okay, so let's drill down on that interaction model most of us are stuck with, that simple chat loop. It's familiar, right? You type something, the system responds, you tweak your input, you try again. And look, it was great for early experiments. It let everyone play around. But when you try to move AI from a fun toy to a real operational tool, why does that chat model just fall apart?
It falls apart because it puts this huge tax on continuity and on efficiency. The chat loop forces the human to constantly, and I mean constantly, reestablish what they're trying to do. Think about a complex project, something that takes a few days. With a chat model, every time you open it up, it's a reset.
That's a massive operational hurdle. It's like having to re-interview your new assistant every single morning. Okay, let's go over everything we learned and decided yesterday again.
Precisely. All the efficiency gain is just gone. And we see these breakdowns in production environments all the time. First, like we said, users are forced to think in prompts. They're focused on clever input, not on the actual outcome they need. Second, all that important context just gets lost between sessions,
Mhm.
which leads to this weird feeling of uh, dangerous power. The decisions you make feel big and important, but they also feel really risky because the system has no memory.
No memory of its own past actions or the constraints you gave it an hour ago. So without that continuity, the overhead just balloons. You're constantly double-checking the output against facts you know or business rules you've already established because the AI itself has no way of remembering those rules on its own.
It stops being leverage and it becomes overhead. That's the bottom line. The core problem is that the chat interface treats every single prompt as a separate transaction, not as part of a continuous structured piece of work. So the user ends up managing the workflow manually outside the system. And that is, by definition, just poor design. The issue isn't that the AI is unproductive, it's that the interface wasn't built for production.
So if that simple conversation loop is the problem, the sources argue that the future isn't about having more conversation, it's about having better structure. Hmm. The next wave of really effective AI systems, they won't feel like a smarter chatbot. They'll feel like a well-designed decision environment.
Let's get into the first key pattern here, which is this shift from asking for a prompt to asking for intent. We've talked about the mental drain of prompt engineering. So what does a system that's actually designed for intent look like? It means the interface guides the user to specify the outcome they want, not the magic words they think the model needs to hear. A good interface guides the user to provide the three essential things for any task: the goal, the constraints, and the acceptable level of risk or trade-offs.
Okay, give me an example.
Sure. With a chat interface, you might type, "Please summarize the Q3 financial report into 3 bullet points for the exec team. Make sure to highlight regulatory risks and keep the tone professional and urgent."
Okay, that's a pretty good prompt, but it's still just one long string of text where, a single misplaced word could throw the whole thing off.
In an intent-based system, that prompt it disappears. Instead, the interface walks you through structured inputs. It asks you to define goal, create Q3 summary, constraints, length, 3 bullets, target audience, exec team, format, internal memo, trade-offs or risk. You might specify, prioritize identifying regulatory risks, even if it means de-emphasizing other financial metrics. The user is expressing intent with fields, with drop-downs, with clear choices.
What's fascinating here is how the roles flip. The job of prompt engineering is taken away from the user completely. It becomes part of the system's design. The interface itself captures that structured intent and then translates it into the perfect API call for the model.
Yes, the user stops being a code interpreter and goes back to focusing on their actual goal.
It's a huge shift.
A huge shift. And the second crucial pattern follows from that. Context that actually carries forward. We said it before. AI that forgets doesn't scale. If you keep getting that deja vu feeling that I've told you this before, the system is fundamentally broken for any real work.
And the sources are really clear that continuity isn't just about remembering the last few lines of chat. A well-designed system maintains continuity across 4 specific layers, which is what allows the intelligence to really compound.
Yes. So first, it maintains continuity of past decisions. The system remembers what it generated before, what you accepted, what you rejected, and maybe even why. Second is user preferences. It learns that you, for example, prefer short, punchy summaries, not long academic ones, and it applies that preference automatically next time.
And then you have the really critical operational contexts, things like domain rules,
Right.
which could be GDPR compliance for a legal team or specific engineering tolerances for a manufacturing client.
And finally, business context. Things like your team structure, approved vendors, even your company's internal acronyms.
So when a system can maintain all 4 of those, decisions, preferences, rules, and business context,
The intelligence becomes cumulative. The AI actually gets smarter for you over time. And every interaction builds on the last one. That's the transition from a fragile one-off tool to a reliable operational partner.
so if the interface gives you that structure and continuity, the next logical step, and this is maybe the biggest threat to user trust, is how much you automate. The source material is very, very clear on this. Blind automation breaks trust almost instantly.
And trust is the only currency that matters for adoption. If users don't trust the system, they'll work around it, they'll double-check everything manually, or they'll just stop using it. So the best AI systems, they understand this. They know they have to preserve human judgment at the most critical points. They automate the repetitive, low-risk, high-volume stuff, but they never eliminate the human's final say on the big, high-stakes decisions.
So how does a good interface manage that balance? It can't just stop every 5 minutes and ask, is this okay? That would be just as annoying. It has to present the automation in a way that respects my time, but still gives me the tools to judge the output quickly.
Precisely. And they do this by preserving judgment through transparency and really some quite subtle interface cues that help you evaluate risk without redoing all the work.
Okay, like what?
Well, first, they show confidence levels. The output isn't just a block of text. It might come with a tag. High confidence, meaning 95% certainty of compliance, or low confidence requires review. That alone lets the human prioritize where to spend their attention.
Second, they have to surface trade-offs. So if the AI generates a sales strategy, it might also say, I optimized for speed of delivery, but just so you know, this decision carries a 15% higher risk of supply chain delays.
It gives you a multivariable view of its own proposal. And third, and this is crucial, it must allow for overrides and escalation. The human expert always has knowledge the model doesn't. If the system gets it wrong, the user needs to be able to easily correct it. And that correction should feed back into the system's memory.
Right.
And they also need an easy way to flag something for human escalation, to say, the system failed here, and here's why.
That really summarizes that essential balance perfectly. The principle that lets these systems scale is so simple, but it's so often missed. It's AI proposes, humans decide.
That's it. That partnership, where the AI does the analysis, provides the options, calculates the risks, and the human provides the final judgment, that's how you get both efficiency and trust.
Okay, so let's tie this all back to the broader market dynamics. We've sort of established that the raw intelligence is now powerful enough for, say, 90% of business tasks. And looking ahead, sure, the models will keep getting better, but they're also rapidly becoming a commodity. Access to huge computing power and really good foundational models is becoming, well, common.
That is the reality. The whole competitive battlefield has shifted. It's no longer about who has the biggest model. It's about who can deliver that intelligence most effectively, most reliably, to the person doing the work. The raw intelligence is becoming a utility, like electricity.
So what's rare then? Where is the real differentiation going to be?
What is genuinely rare is an interface that can do 4 specific things at the same time. It has to radically reduce the user's cognitive load. It has to fit naturally into how people already work. It must hide the underlying complexity, things like temperature, token counts, instead of exposing it. And above all, it has to make the AI feel fundamentally dependable, not just impressive, not just fun to play with, but dependable.
That dependable interface is the new moat. It's the new differentiator.
It is.
And the source material points out that this is where a lot of teams go wrong. When they hear better interfaces, they think superficially. A cleaner dashboard, maybe a faster response time.
Right, but the shift we're talking about is much, much deeper than a UI refresh.
Well, what is the deeper shift?
The deeper shift is recognizing that AI interfaces aren't just displays. They are becoming decision environments. And this isn't a UI problem you can solve with a front-end developer. It's a fundamental system architecture and human-computer interaction problem.
And these decision environments, they're revolutionary because they actively shape our behavior at work. They influence how we think through problems, how much responsibility we're willing to delegate to a machine.
Exactly. How you evaluate risk.
And ultimately, how much we trust the final output. The interface is actually setting the rules for human-AI collaboration.
That is the crux of the future we're heading into. When the quality of all the underlying models is uniformly excellent, which is happening fast, any improvements to the model will start to feel incremental. A 3% boost in accuracy, maybe, but interface improvements that deliver real continuity and intent-based structure.
Those will feel transformational.
They will feel transformational. They'll unlock the power of the intelligence we already have.
So what does this all mean for you looking ahead? Well, the teams that get this trend early, they're going to stop the arms race. They'll stop chasing model scale for its own sake. They'll realize they already have enough intelligence. Their entire focus will shift to designing AI that fits naturally with human judgment and supports real, continuous work.
The next big leap in AI capability, it's not going to be some loud, flashy new model announcement. It's going to be quieter, calmer, and infinitely more trustworthy, because it's going to happen entirely at the interface layer, where human intent meets machine capability.
So we'll leave you with a provocative thought to consider.
If the burden of prompt engineering, that really tiresome, precise crafting of words, if that moves entirely into the system's design, The human's role has to fundamentally change. You're no longer required to be this meticulous typist of commands. You're now a master of defining purpose. So what new skill, then, does a human need to develop to work with a system that demands crystal clear intent, meticulously defined constraints, and a sober assessment of risk instead of just clever text input? That shift from being a commander to being an evaluator and a constraint definer,
Oh.
that's the future of how we'll work with AI, something to mull over until our next deep dive.